Welcome to Father Matt's Bible Studies and Sermons videos and podcast. In today's Bible study, we study the Pentateuch, beginning with Genesis and continuing with Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. God bless you and hope you enjoy the Bible study. Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessing on our Bible study this morning. On this, the Feast of the Ascension, may our readings of Leviticus match up nicely with our steak dinner this evening. All this we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Let's just pick up where we were, which is in Leviticus. We read the first two chapters of Leviticus, and we dealt with, anybody remember what type of offerings? There were two.
There was shoot. What's it called?
There whole burnt offerings was one. Right? Whole burnt offerings and then grain offerings.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let's continue reading. There's going to be three more types of offerings. All right. So chapter 3 is a new type of offering called offerings of well-being. You might have heard of those as peace offerings, right? Those are
Right.
One or the other. We'll see how it works, but going backwards just a little bit. So in the ancient world, in most cultures, there were essentially two types of offerings. There were burnt whole offerings, and I think the grain offering kind of falls into that. It's kind of a kind of separate version of it. Or a grain offering might also be similar to a well-being. It's kind of like an in-between offering, maybe. But the other major category, so burnt whole, and the other major category is offerings of well-being. The difference, anybody want to guess what the difference between burnt whole and well-being is?
You get to share.
Yep, that's it. That's the difference. You get to eat some of your offering, right? So we haven't seen that yet, so we will see that now with the offerings of well-being. Let's see. All right. Let's see. Bob, can you read the entire chapter?
Sure.
Chapter
Just
3.
checking. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. If the offering is a sacrifice of well-being, if you offer an animal from the herd, whether male or female, you shall offer one without blemish before the Lord. You shall lay your hand on the head of the offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall dash the blood against all sides of the altar. You shall offer from the sacrifice of well-being and offer by fire to the Lord the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails, the two kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. Then Aaron's son shall turn these into smoke on the altar with the burnt. I'm on my iPad and I'm seeing your picture there, so I'm going to guess what I'm saying. With the burnt offering that is on the fire, and an offering by fire of pleasing odor to the. If you're offering for a sacrifice of well-being to the
Lord, yeah, you got
to the Lord. Your picture's just blocking those three lines.
Yeah, you can slide me over. If you slide me over, it goes away.
Okay. If you're offering for a sacrifice of well-being to the Lord is from the flock, male or female, you shall offer one without blemish. If you present a sheep as your offering, you shall bring it before the Lord and lay your hand on the head of the offering. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and Aaron's sons shall dash its blood against all the sides of the altar. You shall did I read this at all? You shall present its fat from the sacrifice of well-being as an offering by fire to the Lord. The whole fatty tail, which shall be removed close to the backbone, the fat that covers the entrails, and all the fat that is around the entrails. the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them and at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. Then the priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as a food offering by fire to the Lord. If your offering is a goat, you shall bring it before the Lord and lay your hand on its head. It shall be slaughtered before the tent of meeting, and the sons of Aaron shall dash its blood against all sides of the altar. You shall present as your offering from it an offering by fire to the Lord. The fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the appendage of the liver, which you shall remove with the kidneys. Then the priest shall turn these into smoke on the altar as a food offering by fire for a pleasing odor. All fat is the Lord's. It shall be a perpetual statute throughout your generations. In all your settlements, you must not eat any fat or any blood.
Great. Okay. That's the whole chapter. Give me 1 second. Anybody notice anything in there that, before I start talking about it, that you'd like to bring up, or anything?
The repeating? Of
It
what to do?
repeats. Yep. So we've seen that before, and we'll see that again. It repeats 3 times, but it's for different animals, right?
Right.
Offer an animal without blemish, right? And then a goat, right? And then from the flock, right? It's, get it? Herd. That's what it is, right? Animal from the herd. That's the key. Animal from the flock. And then animal, and then a goat. So it's 3 times, but it's the same, essentially the same process for each one, but because they're slightly different, it gives it 3 times. Yep. So, Bob, when you said, yeah, had I already read this?
Yeah.
Not exactly. Not exactly.
Okay.
Right? So it's 3 different, it's just instructions for, and again, chapters 1, 2, and 3 so far are instructions for you and me, maybe not me because I'm a priest. It's for you when your average person is bringing an offering. This is what you do, right? You do this, you bring it, and then this is how it's killed, and this is the part of that is offered. Any other things in here?
So blood is for the Lord and fat is for the Lord.
Yes.
And the blood is to be dashed on the sides of the altar. And the fat
Yes.
is to be burned, right?
Yes. Yes.
Is that easy to do? To separate these out like that? And to
I don't
separate
know.
out the blood? And why is the blood for the Lord?
Good questions. So the easy to do is, I don't know the answer to that. It's probably easy enough to do. It's basically butchering, right? Like you're cutting off certain parts of the fat and this and that, like the whole fatty tail, which shall be removed close to the backbone, right? It's this area. So it's essentially, to a degree, it's kind of butchering technique and instructions. The blood is, exactly what they were doing. They were probably killing the animal and letting the blood drain out and then dashing it against the altar. Because the blood is, as we talked about last time, the blood is the actual offering, right? In this case, though, the fat also is part of the offering. So earlier, when it was the whole burnt offering, the whole animal was burned, but what mattered was the blood, right? And the smell was important, but the actual offering was the blood there. In this case, it's the fat and the blood, and you get almost the same thing with one slight difference right here. This is kind of interesting. Food. This is the only time, I think, in Leviticus that the offering is referred to as food to the Lord, which is kind of interesting. One way to think about that is it is very much in line with what all of the other ancient cultures and their sacrificial cults would have been doing, which is they'd sacrifice certain things to their god, and it would be food, right? We actually see some of that in Daniel, where they have the story of where they leave all the food in the temple overnight, and it turns out that it's a ruse. But for the most part, the idea that it's food food to the Lord is not overt. It's usually a pleasing odor. But this is interesting. What was your other question? It was about blood, but I can't remember what it was.
I was just
How often?
wondering. Yeah, sorry.
No, Charles.
That's what, how often does this happen?
Let me get Charles first because he had
I'm sorry.
a question. Yeah.
It was just I thought the blood was quite new to us, and I was trying to work out why blood is being reserved.
It's a big thing in Leviticus. So we had it last time. I don't know if you were on last week.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
So last week yes, it's a new thing. We haven't had anything like this whatsoever through Genesis and Exodus, and Leviticus is entirely different. It's as if you're reading. Probably a good way to think about this. It's as if you're reading through the Bible and you've been getting bits and pieces of the priest's handbook that has been kind of put into it. You know, the priest's creation was there, and you had a couple of other things about stories from the priest's perspective that kind of crept in from time to time. And then the priest's handbook sort of took over on Mount Sinai in terms of how to build the tabernacle and how it was built. And now we're still in the priest's handbook, and blood is a big deal in the priest's handbook. That's probably the best way to think about it, is what they care about is, and something, I guess, that it's the lifeblood. It's hard to tell. What they care about is that the blood is dashed against this and that in a really particular way. And the blood itself is the offering. However, it's not only the blood. In this case, the fat is really essential, and the fat. So, you know, I do recognize it's 8:10 in the morning, but today I will be buying ribeye. Right? If you have not RSVP'd, you can. You still can for tonight if you want. It's not too late because I haven't bought the steak. But the ribeye is my favorite cut because it's one of the fattiest cuts. Right? Like if you think of brisket, right, is another one that is a fatty cut that is, so the fatty cuts often are considered the best cuts, not by everybody, but in the ancient world it does seem that the fat is sort of the best part, right? It's the most flavorful part, and so the Lord gets the best part of the meat. And did anybody notice that where it said and we all get to eat it? Anybody remember reading that?
No.
No, that didn't come up, right? Even though I said that at the beginning.
Right.
It's not stated here. It's assumed. And I think this is a classic example of you'd have to know the culture in order to really understand what you just read. Because it's assumed, and they're not even going to tell you. It's like, well, it'd be sort of like we're having this. If I tell you all about how we're cooking all this steak and this and that, and I never tell you that everyone's going to eat it, you'd assume, right? Well, of course we're going to eat it. So what happens to the rest of it? It gets eaten, all right, by everybody. And it's not stated here. It is in other places, so we'll get that if you keep reading, and I hope you as we go through, we'll eventually get to the point where we do see that happens. So sometimes you have to read ahead, sometimes you have to know the culture. I think in this example, people that were reading it would be like, well, of course we eat it. Like they just know what it is, right? They know what and it doesn't describe, for what it's worth, it never describes what a sacrifice of well-being is. It only tells you how to do it. And again, that's assumed, right? It's assumed that you know what it is. So what is a sacrifice of well-being? It's a sacrifice you would do as part of an agreement, as part of a ritual, whenever the heck you feel like it. Could be anything. It could be attached to something, and we'll see as we read through Leviticus that occasionally whole burnt offerings or grain offerings or sacrifices of well-being are prescribed as the mandated sacrifice if you've done something. But all three of these also are sacrifices that you could do anytime you felt like. If it's like, well, I just feel like giving thanks to God, so I'll go and I'll offer something. And you can do either a whole burnt offering, or you can do a grain offering, or you can do an offering of well-being and eat some of it. So it really was up to you whenever you felt like doing this. And we see that somewhat regularly. The offering of well-being, the sacrifice of well-being that we just read about is what Moses was asking to go out and do in the wilderness when they were in Egypt. We want to go out and sacrifice to our God. That's all they wanted to do, was to go out into the wilderness and do one of these offerings of well-being. So all the people would go out, they'd sacrifice to the God, to the Lord, and then they'd eat something, and Pharaoh didn't believe that they'd come back, right? And he was right.
Mhm.
And we see that over and over again. Elkanah is I think Samuel's father, maybe Samson. I think he's Samuel's. He does sacrifices of well-being. David does them, so they come up from time to time in the actual narrative. And interestingly, it's very rare, if at all. I'm actually not sure it ever happens that anybody is ever doing any of the other sacrifices that we're going to read about in the next 2 chapters. Maybe they do, but I can't think of an example. But these offerings of well-being happen all the time. Essentially, any time we've seen somebody sacrifice up to this point, it's one of these offerings of well-being. And so it's not that Leviticus is creating this for, as something that only the people of Israel do. It's that everybody knew how to do these things, and Leviticus is prescribing how the Israelites are supposed to do this well-known sacrifice. Make sense? Okay. Charlotte, did that answer yours? Because I think you said, how often are these done?
Yeah, that does answer. My thought is, as you're dashing blood on each one of these occasions, I can't imagine that the odor is pleasing.
No, I'm sure it's not. Part of it's outside, and there's a lot of
Okay.
incense inside, right?
Oh, okay.
So you've kind of got both. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you were on, we looked at that giant thurible from Santiago with all the smelly pilgrims, right? So even to this day, like, incense is used to cover up smells, right? So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah. So how often though? All the time. Like, so
Okay.
we did our numbers last week or 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago we did the numbers, and if you take them and put them into modern times, we are our priestly handbook here has accounted for essentially a city the size of, population-wise, the size of Dallas, moving through the wilderness, right? So there's a lot of people that are, and whether that is actually going on is a different conversation. But regardless of that, these are also things that would be going on in Jerusalem, and the answer is every day, every single day, right? Like, you're having this go on every day. It's similar, different type of ritual, certainly, but it's similar to how often do Christians actually celebrate the Eucharist? And the answer is all the time, right? Like, all the time. And you'll be, well, it's just Sundays, right? It's like, no, some denominations just do Sundays, some do just quarterly, but some do daily, and some do on holy days. And, when are the holy days? Well, today's one, right? Today's Ascension Day. So all the time is the answer, essentially, to both of those. This was their... And the Eucharist is compared to this a lot, right? The Eucharist is blood and body, right? A lot of same imagery, same language. The sacrifice of the Mass is something that you may have heard about. The altar is very much something that we've been reading about, right? There's a reason why Protestants, not all Protestants, but by sort of the harder Protestants, refer to it as the Holy Table rather than an altar. They don't like the sacrifice language. They don't want that in there, right? They think of it. So, like, when you talk about Eucharistic theology, even that is very different depending on which denomination you're in, right? In Catholic world, the sacrifice of the Mass is a standard line, and the altar is what it's called. In the Episcopal Church, most of the time it's called an altar, but you can run into places where they refer to it as the Holy Table. So our umbrella is a little bit more Catholic and Protestant. All right, any other questions on this? I think I covered everything that I wanted to.
The commentators talk about the kidneys and the liver as important. The kidneys are thought of the seat as a seat of emotion or intelligence and conscience, and the liver is thought of the seat of anger. So it's interesting places to sacrifice.
Yeah. Well, how much of that, and I don't know the answer to this, how much of that is after the fact? How much of that is something that has existed even before Leviticus was written, right? Like, it's hard to tell sometimes. But yeah, No, certain things are, and those are sacrificed, I think, right? Yeah, they get turned into smoke. People like, I mean, people like to eat liver, right? Like they like these things too. So, some of the best parts. For the record, you didn't have to do this every time you wanted to eat an animal, right? You could have an animal outside of sacrificing it at the tabernacle. You could do that on your own, right? Make sense? Okay. Okay. Oh, one more thing. This is the sort of line that, it's all the fat is the Lord's. That's something that, it's like almost a proverb type of thing, right? All the fat is the Lord's. And it's a statute, right? Forever, it's kind of the motto of the sacrifice of well-being for the Israelites. And it looks ahead in all your settlements for what that's worth, right? So you never get to eat any fat or any blood, which is extending it beyond just the sacrifice thing. So you don't eat fat, you don't eat blood, and if you want to ask your kosher butcher how that works, the kosher butcher will know exactly how that works. So there are certain types of fat that you can eat and certain types of fat that you cannot eat. And the ones that you cannot eat are the ones that are reserved for the Lord, and there's no blood that you can eat. Even though meat has blood in it. That's a whole different thing. But they're talking about like actual, like blood. All right. Another type of offering, purification offering. Sometimes this is called sin offering. Probably not the ideal way to think about it, but we'll get to that. Charles, can you read... not the whole chapter. That's too long. Let's go through 12.
The Lord spake to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelites, saying, when anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done, and does any one of them, if it is the anointed priest who sins, thus bringing guilt on the people, he shall offer for the sin that he has committed a bull of the herd as a purification offering to the Lord. He shall bring the bull to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord and lay his hand on the head of the bull. The bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest shall take some of the blood of the bull and bring it into the tent of meeting. The priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is in the tent of meeting before the Lord, and the rest of the blood of the bull he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering, which is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of purification offering, the fat that covers the entrails and all the fat that is around the entrails, the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them at the loins, and the lobe of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys, just as these are removed from the ox of the sacrifice of well-being. The priest shall turn them into smoke upon the altar of burnt offering. But the skin of the bull and all its flesh, as well as the head, its legs, its entrails, and its dung, all the rest of the bull, he shall carry out to a clean place outside the camp, to the ash heap, and shall burn it on a wood fire. At the ash heap it shall be burned.
Okay, great. Anybody have any thought about what's going on here?
I just think with all these animals being burnt and food is at a premium, it's a terrible waste.
Well, this was...
I know.
Yeah, they're burning all of it up, right? This one is not eating, right? This is a purification offering.
Yeah.
So in line with that, right? So why is it not a waste? What is going on? I mean, this is a really interesting question. What is going on that would require this?
Well, it's a sacrifice. You're giving up something that's valuable to you.
But why are you doing it? The reason is right here.
Somebody sinned.
Because you screwed up.
Yep.
Unintentionally.
Unintentionally. Wow. Yeah.
Right? So these are, and we're going to get a couple of them. these are sins is probably not the best way of thinking about it. Well, maybe a sin is something that separates you from God or your neighbor, right? So let's. Can you think of an unintentional sin based on either any of the laws that we've heard, or things that you know are coming up? Anybody think of any unintentional sin? How does one sin unintentionally?
Well, by accident, you could kill somebody, I suppose.
You could do that. That's one.
You could stretch the truth, which is really a lie, but to you, it's just a small reinterpretation of the facts, and that's a sin. But maybe it's unintentional. You just accidentally did it. You didn't, or you tell somebody they look beautiful when they really look ugly.
That may not be unintentional, though.
You don't want to hurt the person.
Well, we'll get to some of that. Yes,
Okay.
Things like that do come up.
You could sleep with somebody's wife without knowing that it's their wife.
Really? Oh, I guess, yeah. They happen to know, right?
You could do that. That's a good one. How about you wake up, you wake up, you start working in your field, and your neighbor says, "What are you doing? It's Saturday." Oh, right. You forgot that it was the Sabbath, right? So there's all of those are actually really good examples, right? You could accidentally, but you probably shouldn't be sleeping with somebody who's not married, for the record, right? So like that.
Well, true. Okay.
Into other areas, but if you begin to think about it, you can begin to come up with what is an unintentional sin, and it can be, you can unintentionally kill somebody, by accident. I don't know how that would exactly happen, but maybe you're driving your ox too fast or something, right? and you trample somebody, or they were asleep in your field and you didn't know they were there. So like there could be a variety of things like that. You could forget that you've made an oath, which seems strange, but maybe in a culture where they make lots of oaths, it's not that strange. It's like, oh, right, I did make an oath that I would never go to a Philadelphia 76ers game or something, right? Like, I forgot about that. That was way back when Charles Barkley was on the team, right? And so I'm sorry, I have to do this, right? So now the first one that we got is the anointed priest, right? One more thing is, so you've done this. What's the problem here? And this is a really helpful way of thinking about the next two categories of offerings, right? We've had whole burnt, we've had grain, and we've had well-being. And as I said, those might be things that you're required to do in a given circumstance, but you can also offer them anytime. These are if you sin unintentionally, and we just came up with some theoretical hypotheticals. And again, it doesn't tell us any yet. It actually will in a little bit. But these are, so you've done this, now you need to do this. But it's worth asking why. Why does it matter? Like, why do you have to go and make a sacrifice? Is it because if you've sinned or unintentionally, are you in the wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But there's something here that, with the way the priestly mindset in Leviticus is that regardless of whether it was intentional or not, things, and there's a wide variety of things that may or may not seem, as we go through Leviticus, that may or may not seem sinful. Like literally, like, I don't get, you may ask this as we go through Leviticus a lot, like, why is that a sin, right? Why is that something that you can't do? The food regulations are a perfect example of that. Why can't you eat lobster? I had lobster last night, right? Like, why can't you eat lobster? Why can't you eat pork? Why can't we do this? How is that a sin? And I think Leviticus would say, these are things that God doesn't want us to do, and God is dwelling with us, and that's that. And so if you make a mistake, or if you do this or you do that, and there's a variety of them, in order to sort of re-purify the sanctuary and the people, so that God continues to dwell with us, we have to make this purification offering. So we have to do this, which I think admittedly is a little difficult to wrap your head around, because we really don't live in a society that or have our religion doesn't work like this, I don't think. I mean, if the mindset here is if somebody has made a sin and has not, made an unintentional sin or an intentional sin, we haven't gotten those. But if somebody does this, if they don't make this sacrifice, you run the risk of God leaving all the people. So it's a more communal thing. The sort of stain is communal rather than individual. And another question that you might ask is, well, what if I've done something and I don't even know I've done something? I think in this case, it's assumed that you've figured out that you've done something wrong unintentionally. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Either you figured it out or somebody told you. Again, you could go out and work on the Sabbath, and if nobody tells you, you've done it anyway, but you never figured it out. But if, like, the next week or a month later, you're like, oh, no, I did that, that's when you're like, oh, I figured it out. I've got to go and make this sacrifice. Okay, the first part here is the anointed priest, and what we're going to get is different categories of who must do what, right? So the priest is really important in this, and so the priest has done something unintentional, whatever it may be, went out and worked on the Sabbath, or forgot he made an oath, or this or that. He has to give a bull, and we've seen most of this already, but the blood part is different. I don't think we've seen the blood work like this, and in this case, the blood is more overt. He has to go inside the tent. I don't think we've gotten that yet, and he's got to put some blood on the in front of the curtain, right? If you remember, what's behind the curtain is the Holy of Holies, and then he's got to go inside and put some on the incense altar, and in terms of would that smell? It depends how much they're putting on, but just in case, they've got the fragrant incense is burning inside as well. And then this is outside. The altar of burnt offering is where the actual sacrifice is. So the rest gets poured out at the base and basically goes into the ground. And that's outside. And again, it tells you the fat and the kidneys and the entrails and the liver and all that stuff gets burned up. And then anything that's left, and I think this is what Bob was alluding to in terms of the waste, anything that's left, and the specificity here is kind of interesting. The skin, we haven't had any of that, so you can't use the skin, right? No leather, can't use any of this. This purification offering, none of it can be used for anything. And earlier, it was a little unclear in the well-being one, and certainly in the whole burnt, everything is burnt. But in this case, this other stuff is not going to be burned up, but it's going to be taken out and thrown away, right? So the skin, the head, the flesh, the legs, the entrails, even the dung, everything, it gets taken out to a clean place outside the camp and burned up there separately. Any comments on that? Okay. JD, you had a comment?
No.
Okay, can you read from 13 to 13 to 26?
Okay. If the whole congregation of Israel errs unintentionally, and the matter escapes the notice of the assembly, and they do any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to have been done, and incur guilt, when the sin that they have committed becomes known, the assembly shall offer a bull of the herd for a purification offering, and bring it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the congregation shall lay their hands on the head of the bull before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. The anointed priest shall bring some of the blood of the bull into the tent of meeting, and the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain. He shall put some of the blood on the horns of the altar that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting, and the rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering that is at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all of its fat and turn it into smoke on the altar. He shall do with the bull just as is done with the bull of purification offering. He shall do the same with this. The priest shall make atonement for them, and they shall be forgiven. He shall carry the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. It is the purification offering for the assembly. When a ruler sins, doing unintentionally any one of all of the things that by the commandments of the Lord his God ought not to be done, and incurs guilt, once the sin that he has committed is made known to him, he shall bring as his offering a male goat without blemish. He shall lay his hand on the head of the goat. It shall be slaughtered at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a purification offering. The priest shall take some of the blood of the purification offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar of burnt offering. All its fat he shall turn into smoke on the altar, like the fat of the sacrifice of well-being. Thus the priest shall make atonement on his behalf for his sin, and he shall be forgiven.
Okay, great. So a little differences there, but I think it becomes a little clearer. So the first one was the priest, right? And he does a bull from the herd, and he's got 7 with the blood in front of the sanctuary and the horns, and the rest is poured out, and everything is burned up. And then the second one, if the entire congregation errs, and you may think, how does an entire people sin? I don't know the answer to that. We do actually see some of this in, I think it's Ezra, where like they read. Oh no, it's not. It's in Second Kings is a good example of this, where they discover what seems to be Deuteronomy, and they read it, and everybody weeps because they haven't been observing things, and so they offer sacrifices, right? So it's like, oh, okay, we didn't do this. When we find out, we'll do what we need to do, right? So what do they do? Also a bull. The elders, this is important, right? The elders are the ones that lay hands on it. So they are the ones taking responsibility. The priest goes in 7 times in front of the curtains, some on the horns. The rest is poured out. Looks very, very similar. And in fact, it says, actually, he does with it just what he did with the bowl of purification offering. So they do the same thing. The second one that JD read, which is the third, is when a ruler sins. Okay, so when, is this a king? They don't have a king, right? So what does this mean? Maybe later they have kings, right? We know that. They have judges. So it's when somebody that's an important person, maybe the tribal elder or the tribal leader does something unintentionally, what do we do in this case? Well, in this case, it's a goat, right? And it's offered, right? Same place, and he takes the finger, but notice there's no blood at the curtain, right? Did you catch that? So that's slightly different. And all the fat is burned, and he does this just like the sacrifice of well-being. So it's a little bit different, but essentially it's for the same purpose. It's still a purification offering, but the details and how it's done is different depending on who you are, not on what you did. That's kind of interesting, right? Like if the priest does it, it has to be done one way. If the entire people does it, it has to be done almost identically to how the priest does it. And if just an important person does it, it's done slightly differently. Kind of interesting, right? So who you are in this sort of priest's handbook matters. And if you're not a priest, even if you're a ruler, you're not as important as the priest. That's my motto too, for what it's worth. All right. Nobody's laughing. Okay. All right. Who's up? James, can you read 27 to the end of the chapter?
27 to the end of the chapter, yes. If any one of the ordinary people among you sins unintentionally in doing any one of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done and incurs guilt, when the sin that you have committed is made known to you, you shall bring a female goat without blemish as your offering for the sin that you have committed. You shall lay your hand on the head of the purification offering. The purification offering shall be slaughtered at the place of the burnt offering. The priest shall take some of its blood with his fingers and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and he shall pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all its fat, as the fat is removed from the sacrifice of well-being, and the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar for a pleasing odor to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf, and you shall be forgiven. If the offering you bring as a purification offering is a sheep, you shall bring a female without blemish. You shall lay your hands on the head of the purification offering. It shall be slaughtered as a purification offering at the spot where the burnt offering is slaughtered. The priest shall take some of the blood of the purification offering with his fingers and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering, and pour out the rest of its blood at the base of the altar. You shall remove all its fat, as the fat of the sheep is removed from the sacrifice of well-being, and the priest shall turn it into smoke on the altar with the offering by fire to the Lord. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for the sin that you have committed, and you shall be forgiven.
Great. Okay. So this is for ordinary people, right? So we have priest, very important first. All the people next, also very important. Third was a ruler, and now everybody else. And the difference between a ruler and everybody else is there's two things. There's actually three. So the ruler, it's a male goat, right? Male goat without blemish, right? And he goes and does this, and some blood is put on the altar of burnt offering. So already there's a difference between the ruler and everybody else. It's not going inside, right? No curtain, and also no altar of incense, right? Only on the altar of burnt offering. So it stays outside. So a ruler is way less important than the people, and way less important than the priest. And an ordinary person, all right, so you're an ordinary person. It's essentially the same as the ruler, except it's a female goat rather than a male goat. And then there's an exception at the end. It's like, so you brought a sheep. Maybe you didn't have enough money for a goat, or you only had a sheep or whatever. It has to be a female sheep, and you can do it that way as well. And again, it's all outside. It's not inside. There's no going into the tent of meeting. So these are the unintentional ones. We'll continue a little bit in the next chapter, which we can start now. But something that nobody has asked yet, but I will... there is a very important Jewish holy day called Yom Kippur. Anybody know what that is for?
Day of Atonement.
Day of Atonement, right? And there's specific things about that we will get to. That will be prescribed as we move forward. There is a Day of Atonement in the Bible. And this whole congregation, the Day of Atonement essentially is, and we'll see more of it, it's essentially a just in case the people haven't realized they've sinned, we're going to do it for everybody every single year. That's what that is, right? It's a sacrifice. It's one of these purification sacrifices for unintentional and intentional, as we'll see, that's just in the calendar. So just in case we don't let more than a year go by ever without everybody having a full-blown version of this. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Let's go into 6. We have 5. We have a little bit of time, I think. Or not. It's actually quarter of. Does anybody have to jump off this second? We can go for probably 5 to 10 minutes if you want. It's up to you.
I'm good.
You want to stay on? Okay. Let's do 5. Charlotte, I don't think you've read yet.
Okay.
Can you read
Okay.
1 through 10, chapters verses 1 through 10 of 5?
Okay. When any of you sin in that you have heard a public adjuration to testify, and although able to testify as one who has seen or learned of the matter, do not speak up, you are subject to punishment. Or when any of you touch any unclean thing, whether the carcass of an unclean beast, or the carcass of an unclean livestock, or the carcass of an unclean swarming thing, and are unaware of it, you have become unclean and are guilty. Or when you touch human uncleanness, an uncleanness by which one can become unclean and are unaware of it. When you come to know it, you shall be guilty. Or when any of you utter aloud a rash oath for bad or good purpose, whatever people utter in an oath and are unaware of it, when you come to know it, you shall in any of these be guilty. When you realize your guilt in any of these, you shall confess the sin that you have committed, and you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed a female from the flock, a sheep, or a goat as a purification offering, and the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for your sin. But if you cannot afford a sheep, you shall bring to the Lord as your penalty for the sin that you have committed 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for purification offering, and the other for a burnt offering. You shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer first one for the purification offering, wringing its head at the nape without severing it. He shall sprinkle some of the blood of the purification offering on the side of the altar, while the rest of the blood shall be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a purification offering. And the second he shall offer for a burnt offering according to the regulation. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for the sin that you have committed, and you shall be forgiven.
Keep going just through 12, through 13.
But if you cannot afford 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, you shall bring as your offering for the sin that you have committed 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour for a purification offering. You shall not put oil on it or lay frankincense on it, for it is pure. It is a purification offering. You shall bring it to the priest, and the priest shall scoop up a handful of it as its memorial portion, and turn this into smoke on the altar with the offerings by the fire to the Lord. It is a purification offering. Thus the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for whichever of these sins you have committed, and you shall be forgiven. As with the grain offering, the rest shall be for the priest.
Okay, great. So this is examples of what might happen, and for almost certainly unintentional things. So we played around a little bit with, can we think of a couple of examples, right? And Leviticus will give us plenty as we move through, but now we get a couple of specific ones, almost as if someone was like, so can you give me some examples now? And Leviticus is like, yeah, sure, okay. So you heard public testimony, and although you were, you were able to testify on something that you saw, you didn't speak up. You're subject to punishment. It's like, well, did I intentionally or not? Probably here it's unintentional. Like, oh, I didn't know about it, or I forgot that I knew about it, that sort of thing. Or here's another example. You touch something, a carcass of an unclean beast. How might that happen? Well, you're walking on the road and maybe you trip and fall into it, right? Or something like that happens. Or you do something unintentionally. It could happen. Like there's plenty of examples. You're walking through the field and you happen to stumble across a dead bird. Uh-oh, I've done this unintentionally. This is a sin, right? Or you did something and somebody tells you and says, hey, by the way, that thing you were playing around with, that's actually was unclean in some way. So you're guilty, you got to go and you got to fix it. And here's another example, is the oath one. Okay, so you utter a rash oath. It was unintentional in some way, right? For good or bad purpose, whatever it is, it was a rash oath. And you're unaware of it. And somebody tells you, you did this, you're guilty. Okay, I'll go and do it. And then it gives us a couple of examples of how you do that. And interestingly, they're slightly different than what we just read, right? So the first one is, okay, female from the flock, sheep or goat. That matches up with what we just saw. And then it's like, well, but what if I can't afford her a sheep or goat? And then you get, okay, so you'll do 2 turtle doves. And it's going to be slightly different. It's going to be a purification as well as a burnt offering. And so what if I can't afford 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons? What do I do there? Well, you get some flour and you do it that way. And so it's, again, it's who you are, what you can afford matters, and it's prescribed differently. And they assume the whole people can pay for a bull. They assume that the priest can pay for a bull. They assume that an elder or a leader, a ruler, can pay for a male goat, and an ordinary person, does it slightly differently. And if you can't, and if you're poor, you still have to do something, but you can do 2 turtle doves. And if you're really poor, you can just do grain. Any questions on that? That cleans you up and cleans up the community. And so we're all good, and the Lord will not leave us. That's the whole point here. Okay? All right. Charles, can you finish the chapter?
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when any of you commit a trespass and sin unintentionally against any of the holy things of the Lord, you shall bring as your guilt offering to the Lord a ram without blemish from the flock, convertible into silver by the sanctuary shekel. It is a guilt offering. And you shall make restitution for the holy thing in which you are remiss, and shall add 1/5 to it and give it to the priest. The priest shall make atonement on your behalf with the ram of the guilt offering, and you shall be forgiven. If any of you sin without knowing it, doing any of the things that by the Lord's commandments ought not to be done, you have incurred guilt and are subject to punishment. You shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock, or the equivalent, as a guilt offering, and the priest shall make atonement on your behalf for the error that you committed unintentionally, and you shall be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. You have incurred guilt before the Lord.
Great. Okay, this is a different type of offering. Okay? It's still unintentional, and it's still mandatory that you do it, right? So the first 3, we've gotten all 5 of them now. The first 3 were burnt whole offerings. They sometimes are prescribed. They're voluntary anytime you feel like doing it. Grain offering, same thing. Sometimes prescribed, voluntary as well. You can do it whenever you want. Sacrifice of well-being, sometimes prescribed. You can, but you can also do it anytime you feel like it. Then we got the purification offering or sin offering, and that's unintentional. You don't do it whenever. You only do it when you are required to. So it's and then this one is a restitution or guilt offering, and I would recommend thinking of them as offering for purification and offering for restitution, or restitution offering and purification offering, rather than sin and guilt, because sin and guilt are categories that we have attached other things to, and these actually don't really have anything to do with what we would describe as normal sins. These are things that you did unintentionally. And so the first one had the example of you unintentionally did X, Y, or Z, an oath, or you didn't testify, or you came across an unclean, a dead animal, or something like that. Now these are different. This is if you commit a trespass or sin unintentionally against a holy thing. There's a whole different category of this. So this is a new category, and it's against a holy thing. And what might that mean? Say, I don't have any examples that are in the text right here, but I can give you some that are probably likely. say you are bringing your offering to the priest, and you put your hand on it, and somehow in this process you muddy up the priest's vestment, or maybe you trip and you accidentally step on one of the utensils that they use and you bend it. You've ruined it, right? This is essentially something that's been holy to the Lord. You've messed up. So how do I deal with that category, right? Well, you A, have to do an offering, and B, you got to give some money because you got to pay for what you broke. That's essentially what this is, right? So you pay money when you've done something. You make literal restitution for the holy thing in which you were remiss, and add 1/5 to it. So you have to basically pay for it, right? So you pay some money back, and you didn't do it intentionally. You did it unintentionally, and so whatever you did, you owe money on top of the offering. Does that make sense? Okay, this is the fifth and final type of sacrifice. All of these are either voluntary whenever you feel like it, or something that was prescribed to do, or something that these last two were unintentional and you're mandated to do. As we go forward, we will discover that, so in a sense, Leviticus is a priest's handbook and rule book. We will discover that as you go through Leviticus, for the most part, there's like 4 types of punishments. Punishment 1 is, if you've done something, and it'll list up things. If you've done X, Y, or Z, if you've done X, then you have to do this sacrifice, whichever one it is. If you've done Y, you've got to do this type of sacrifice. That's category 1. Category 2 is whatever you did is so bad that there's a completely different punishment for you, right? And those are either some sort of restitution or some sort of physical punishment or death, right? So there are certain things that you can do that are so bad in Leviticus that you're basically cast out of the community or killed or something like that. We haven't gotten those yet, and Leviticus is less concerned with those right now, but as we go through, we will see that there are things that make you so unclean that you're out completely. To next week, we will continue with 6, and we're going to go backwards and start again with different types of offerings. We'll see in a little bit, but we'll pick up with 6 next week, and I think it's. Oh no, let's. You know what? Sorry, let's finish this because this is the last example. JD, can you just read this last couple of verses?
The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "When any of you sin and commit a trespass against the Lord by deceiving a neighbor in a matter of a deposit or a pledge, or by robbery, or if you have defrauded a neighbor, or have found something lost and lied about it, if you swear falsely regarding any of the various things that one may do and sin, when you have sinned and recognize your guilt and would restore what you took by robbery or by fraud or the deposit that was committed to you, or the lost thing that you found, or anything else about which you have sworn falsely, you shall repay the principal amount and add 1/5 to it. You shall pay it to its owner when you recognize your guilt. And you shall bring to the priest as your guilt offering to the Lord a ram without blemish from the flock, or its equivalent, for a guilt offering. The priest shall make atonement on your behalf before the Lord, and you shall be forgiven for any of the things that one may do and incur guilt thereby."
Great. Okay, so the next section will go backwards to burnt offering, and it will be the instructions for the priests. This was the people, right, all the way up until this point. And this section is a little different because it's the first time we've sort of gotten intentional things, right? You've done something by deceiving a neighbor in money or robbery, and it's a little difficult to say that you've done this unintentionally, right, in terms of defrauding something or robbery or lost or lied about it or whatever it may be. interestingly, you think, why is this in this category of restitution? And it's there for kind of two reasons. It's primarily there because you swore about it. That's what's interesting. You did it, and then you made an oath that was, right, if you swear falsely. So the problem here is that you made a false oath, and you brought the Lord's name into it. Like we know one of the commandments is do not use the Lord's name in vain. That's what's going on here, right? So you've done something that does affect the holy thing, which is the Lord's name. And so you have to make restitution. What's different here is that you have to make restitution to the neighbor. That's a different thing, right? So the money goes to the neighbor, but the offering goes to the tabernacle and to the priests. So it's a slightly different shift, and it's actually a helpful kind of hinge in Leviticus because we will get a lot more things about how you make different types of restitution, as I was talking about, or not, as we go forward. All right, sorry we went a little long. Any thoughts on this before we head out? All right, I will see you all later. God bless.